Hello folks, in this video I also want to talk about one more way you could solve and then graph these single variable inequalities, and this actually kind of gets around the part of possibly forgetting to flip the sign when you multiply by a negative number. And so I'll write down the example, and then we'll write down the steps, and we'll just talk about it. Okay, so our example today will be this 3 times, I'll change it up a little bit, x plus 4 is greater than or equal to, I don't know, 8. Okay, we're going to do a fraction. That's okay. Alrighty, so step 1. Ignore the inequality. Ignore the inequality, solve it like an equation. Okay, that's step 1. So really, I don't care about this for now. Okay, so really, we're solving this. X plus 4 is equal to 8. Okay, so we can solve this. So I could distribute, by the way, if I really wanted to. I think instead, I'm actually going to divide by 3. So I'll divide both sides by 3. And I'll get x plus 4 is equal to 8 over 3. I'm going to want to subtract 4 from both sides. And we'll get, let's see, 4 in terms of thirds is 12 thirds. So if I'm starting with 8 thirds, taking away 12 of them, I should end up with negative 4 over 3. And that's my answer to this equation, by the way. Now, what you just found, this thing, I like to call it the boundary point. To find the boundary point. Okay, so by the boundary point, this is what I mean. I mean that our inequality is going to look like this. Negative 4 over 3. And that's going to be the point that's kind of our starting point for our arrow. Either going to the left or to the right. Okay, so at this point, we have that. Okay, second question, or step 2, is we'll plot that boundary point. So plot the boundary point on your graph. But this would also help when you're, again, solving algebraically. Plot the boundary point. And again, now we want to see, do we have to fill it in or not? Well, remember we talked about how we said fill in the boundary point if your sign is greater than or equal to or less than or equal to. In this scenario, we have an or equal to, so we will actually fill that in. So we have negative 4 thirds, and we'll fill that in. I'll make it really big and obvious for now. You don't fill it in, remember, if it's strictly greater than or strictly less than. Okay, step 3. Now we have to figure out which way the arrow goes. To find out which side that is, you just have to plug in something on one side or the other. Now, the inequality is not going to be both of them, and it won't be neither of them. Because it's an inequality, we know that there should be a lot of answers. And so it's either going to be pointing to the left and going forever, or pointing to the right and going forever. So it actually doesn't matter which side you pick. Okay, so test or check a value on either side. It has to be on either side. It can't actually be the boundary point itself because it doesn't tell you anything. On either side the boundary point. Boundary point. Okay, so if possible, I recommend choosing x equals 0 because that makes your life a lot easier most of the time. So for us, that will work. Negative 4 over 3 because that's over here. 0 would be somewhere or over here. So I'm going to check that. Okay, so I'm going to plug in x equals 0. And remember, the original inequality was 3 times x plus 4 greater than, I believe, greater than or equal to 8. Okay, so what happens here? Well, if I plug this in, I'll get 3 times 0 plus 4, which is 4, is greater than or equal to 8. Again, I'm asking if this is true. Hopefully this is true, but it actually doesn't matter if it's true or not. This is greater than or equal to 8. Okay, what do we set? So this is true. So x equals 0 is a solution. Remember that. When I plug in x equals 0, the statement is true. The equation, or the inequality in this case, is valid. Okay, what does that mean? Well, if here's our boundary point right here, and we know that this is a solution, well, all of the other solutions must also be on that side, because it wouldn't make sense for some of them to be over here and some over there. And so what we are doing is going to draw that, and we're actually done. Okay, so what would happen if it wasn't a solution? Well, here's our boundary point. If we plugged in 0 and it wasn't a solution, well, that means nothing on this side would be a solution. Because again, that's the boundary point, and so it splits our possible solutions into this side or that side. If we plugged in x equals 0 and said, okay, it's not a solution over here, then nothing over here will be a solution, and all of the solutions must be on this side. So it actually doesn't matter if the test point you plug in is a solution or not. If it is a solution, great. That's the way your arrow goes. If it's not a solution, well, that's not the way the arrow goes, so the arrow must go the other way. And so let's write that down here. If the test point is a solution, draw your arrow pointing that way. Draw your arrow in that direction. Hopefully that makes sense. In that direction. If not, you draw the arrow in the other way. Draw an arrow in the opposite direction. This is actually an interesting way of thinking about it. Again, maybe not quite necessary because you can solve it algebraically, fairly easily. However, I do think that this will help when we get to graphing multivariable inequalities. So I do think at least having this in mind is helpful. Alrighty? And so even if you don't remember how to, remember to flip the sign, you can always check by doing this method. All right, 3-step method, not too bad, and hopefully that helps and makes sense. And I'll see you in the next video.